All right, everyone. So thank you for being here. I think we'll go ahead and get started. We'll um, stick with the hour mark here as we begin. If I can ask you to please just remember to mute your microphones. We are recording this session for those folks who can't join us live. We're grateful for you being here live and for the conversation that we will have this afternoon. On behalf of the Jesuit School Network's conference office, welcome to our latest virtual inquiry session. As you know, the JSN seeks to be a supportive resource to our member schools, and this virtual session is designed to be just that, a carved out space to listen, to learn, and to engage. We're eager to encourage a spirit of inquiry across the many layers of our work in Jesuit education, and we envision our particular brand of educational inquiry to be the art of inquiry as seen through our Ignatian lens, asking questions and exploring issues that matter in our schools through the frame of our shared Jesuit mission. I am Kristen Ross Cully, Director of Educational Inquiry with the JSN, and I'd like to thank my colleague, Kristen Smith, who leads all things communications for us at the JSN, who is here on the Zoom as well and will help us to enjoy a smooth session together this afternoon. We might take a moment to begin, as we always do, with an opening prayer. If I can ask you in the many time zones represented across this screen, if you might take just a moment to quiet yourself in the middle of your day. A prayer of shelter and shadow. We know that sometimes we are alone, and sometimes we are in community. Sometimes we are in shadow, and sometimes we are surrounded by shelter. Sometimes we feel like exiles in our land, in our languages, and in our bodies. And sometimes we feel surrounded by welcome. As we seek to be human together, may we share the things that do not fade: generosity, truth-telling, silence, respect, and love. And may the power we share be for the good of all. We honor God, the source of this rich life, and we honor each other, storyful and lovely. Whether in our shadow or in our shelter, may we live well and fully with each other. Saint Ignatius of Loyola, pray for us. In the name of the Father, Son, and Spirit. Amen. Again, I welcome you to our first virtual inquiry session of the 25-26 school year, which is exciting for us. And our session is entitled Grad at Grad: How Are Schools Evaluating Character? The Grad at Grad, as you know, is an anchor document guiding our Jesuit schools, an aspirational articulation of where our students will grow in character by the time they graduate. This virtual session shares a recent research thesis examining how we assess student development in being religious and loving. In sharing his research across the JSN, Father Simon Zachary will highlight the value of exploring pedagogies of character formation, clearly rooting his research in the mission and identity of our schools. He will also share how this research is the foundation of an exciting project that we are working on for our schools, and that is the development of a new mission assessment survey centered around the Grad at Grad. To properly introduce Father Zachary. Father Simon Zachary currently teaches in the Social Studies Department and serves as a school chaplain at Brophy College Preparatory in Phoenix, Arizona. He has also taught and helped with chaplaincy work recently at Seattle Prep. Simon is passionate about Ignatian education and is particularly interested in measuring student impact. While studying at the University of San Francisco, Simon wrote his master's thesis on the profile of the graduate at graduation as lived out at Brophy. 2 years ago, he designed a modified version of our SPS2 survey and administered it to graduating Brophy seniors. Simon also holds a Master's of Divinity degree from Santa Clara University's Jesuit School of Theology and a Master's in International Political Economy from Fordham University. When not at school, Simon can be found baking, cooking, drinking coffee, praying, or wishing he were on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea with his extended family in Egypt, and we join him in that wish.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Welcome all. So good to be with all of you. Uh, I'll just say as we begin, there are a few students just outside the office that I'm in, and they're on a free period. So apologies if you can hear them a little bit in the background, but I suppose it will add to our discussion of secondary ed. We have a real case study. Wonderful. And the slides are up. Great. So as Dr. Kristen Ross-Culley had mentioned, I'm happy to share with you a little bit of the learnings that I've discovered by the way of looking at the profile of the grad at Grad and exploring especially the attributes of being religious and loving and using Brophy College Preparatory in Phoenix as a case study. So that's the plan for this afternoon or morning, depending on where you find yourself around the world. A little bit of introduction, a little bit of background about the thesis that I wrote. I'll share with you the methodology that we used, what we learned, what we found, as well as some kind of neat stuff about what's transpired since the thesis was written, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. Uh, Before we really dive right into it, I'd like to just encourage you to get coffee if that's your thing, and just to enjoy and have a chance to relax. I've got my own cup of coffee here with Brophy on the mug. I love caffeine. I think coffee is probably something that unites all of us as Ignatian educators. We're united in mission, but we are also united in just the reality that all of us are so dedicated and put in long hours, regardless of where it is that we work and serve. And so I want to thank you for all the amazing work that you do. If I had an unlimited budget, I'd make an attempt to get coffee for people across this Zoom call. But I've listed a few coffee places that I've really loved over the years in Seattle and Phoenix, two cities special to my heart. This is just a title of what I wrote my master's thesis on. So I started with, what does it mean to be religious and loving anyways? And I wrote it in spring 2023, so about 2.5 years ago now. Just as an introduction, I thought maybe we'd talk about why I was interested in the Grad at Grad and what attracted me to writing about it. So all of us do just incredible work as Ignatian educators, and I think the anchor doc, the profile of the Grad at Grad, does just an outstanding job at capturing all the good work that you do. And I wanted to learn more about that to kind of concretize what's going on. I was also curious about how education has evolved in the 21st century, and especially most recently, considering some recent events like the global pandemic that we have come out of and seen the other side of, and just the ways in which we've seen impacts of that. I'm also a big data nerd, admittedly. I have the Microsoft logo above where this graduation ceremony had taken place, not because Microsoft had sponsored that graduation ceremony, but I used to work for the company before I entered the Jesuits, and worked for them in their digital advertising wing, and was really fascinated by numbers and the story that we can tell when we have some information about whatever it might be. And so naturally find myself drawn to seeing what we can learn about our students. And then the fourth reason that I wrote about the Grad at Grad was, I was sitting around brainstorming for this thesis, and I thought, well, I've got to do something. So maybe I ought to just just go for it and take a deep dive. I will say that several friends of mine had commented, and I noticed this in myself too, that even though writing a thesis can be a laborious process, that I found a lot of energy within myself as I was going through and discussing with others and doing that research. Oops. So just maybe a refresher to us if you're curious, okay, what are the five attributes or pillars of the Grad at Grad? The profile seeks to be an anchor doc to just articulate like what are the five qualities that we hope graduates of our Ignatian institutions kind of possess and carry with them as they look ahead to their next steps. So intellectually competent, loving, open to growth, religious, and committed to doing justice. For the sake of my thesis, I decided to zero in just on two of those five attributes. And I was up for a little bit of a challenge. I thought, well, the five attributes are all important in their own right, and yet I was kind of thinking, okay, the religious and loving pillars are um, pivotal, excuse me, to the high school experience, and yet it's harder to measure them. They're a little bit more qualitative. If we were curious about intellectual competence, for example, we could look at how many national merit scholars do we have in a particular school, or how many AP courses are offered, or average GPA, or so forth. But how exactly to measure if one's high school experience has helped them get in touch with their faith or help them to become more loving. I was curious about that. I also had read that this trend of secularization that we've experienced for a few decades now had kind of moved even faster as a result of the pandemic. And so curious where we stood there. When I wrote this, we were just about 2 years into the pandemic. And so that was on my mind. I was also thinking about the ways in which perhaps social interactions were stunted during the pandemic. So many schools had moved to online learning, and all the things we know about education and its value of the face-to-face and the relationship building. I was wondering about what our students had to kind of offer by the way of that. So just as a glimpse of some of the data that I was considering, some of the nationwide data that I was considering as a backdrop to all of this, you can see that there's been a decline in the percentage of Americans who identify as Catholic. You can also see that most young adults who in this country identify as Catholic don't necessarily make it to Mass or for a variety of reasons are not attending. And also this idea that weekly worship across faith traditions has been on the decline. Now you'll notice that a few of those studies are from a few years ago. Um, the encouraging news is that that's kind of been reversed, or some of that trend has been reversed. There's a new CARA study that came out just earlier this year that mentioned the percentage of Catholics who are attending Mass across all age ranges has doubled since the start of the pandemic. So some encouraging things there. At the start of the pandemic, I was kind of curious about the impact of the pandemic as well as kind of this trend of secularization. I apologize that part of this slide is cut off, but um, what you can see is just a snippet from our anchor doc, from the JSN anchor doc on the Grad at Grad, as it talks about what it means to be a person of faith, or what it means to be religious. So I'll give you a second, read through that. And then here's a snippet or a blurb from that same document about what how we might define a student being loving from one of our institutions. Again, I apologize that the text is cut off. That's I think a 90s reference from I forget the title of the song, but Baby Don't Hurt Me. And it starts out with what is love? So I thought that was apt for talking about being loving. In terms of the methodology that we employed, we did a few things. So I created a video just on YouTube. I wasn't on Brophy's campus as we launched this survey at the time. So I just made a video kind of introducing myself and explaining what we were doing. I also want to give a major shout out to Megan Agliano. Not sure if she's able to join us on this call, but she's Brophy's Religious Studies Department chair, and she was instrumental, especially being the eyes and ears locally on campus to help me get the survey distributed to students. The survey was short. It was just 20 questions or so. 5 of them were free response. 15 of them were multiple choice. Um, we borrowed some of the 15 from the Jesuit schools network. The JSN has had a survey that's existed based off of this anchor document. And so we took a few of those questions and then also added in the possibility for free-form responses. We borrowed 2 from a study done just about a year prior by Dinglazon, who does some work in other Catholic schools and was curious to hear about mission and an identity in her context. So the length was fairly brief, just a little over 50 minutes, and all seniors had the possibility of taking the survey. They were close to graduation, just a couple months before they received their diplomas. And we administered it in what we call our community period, which is an opportunity to reach every student. And you can kind of see just a list of some of those sample questions. So I'll give you a second. You want to glance across to see anything that stands out to you. And then here's just a brief overview of some of the things that we learned. We're pretty pleased with the results. We had just under 50% of students who had taken the survey, and especially considering second semester seniors, sometimes it's hard to get second semester seniors really to take anything that isn't directly related to a grade that they received. So we were happy that a good number of them wanted to contribute. We found some really encouraging information about mass attendance, about independent prayer, about how people view faith as being involved or compelling them to consider service to one another. So really encouraging information, data, and Brophy students seem to be outliers in a good way, surpassing their peers in other Catholic schools. We did some research about, okay, what are the norms or what are the impacts of other Catholic schools around the US by the way of faith. Kairos seemed to get mentioned over and over and over again. It was just such a neat refrain to see, and just to have that awareness of what impact that retreat had on students' lives. Students mentioned that they had become more loving and they thought that their school had really helped them with that. Students were also asking us for things that maybe we hadn't heard them ask for before. And in part because we had those free-form response possibilities, that we had the possibility of asking students, hey, could we have done something more, or could there have been something else that may have been helpful to you in your faith journey or in your quest to become a more loving person? And so you can see quite a few students were asking for more communal prayer opportunities, which again, for high school students to be curious about and advocate for, I think really, really impressive. And so made a few recommendations there. I'll give you just a snapshot of what's transpired since that survey was administered. And certainly, I don't want to oversell the survey. I would be incorrect of me to make the point that the survey impacted some decisions that administration had made with respect to programming at the school. But I think it was one piece of data among others that kind of continued that conversation or sparked some conversation. So because so many students were mentioning Kairos as being really, really formative, the school made a decision to move it from being offered to seniors to juniors. There was a world religions class that was reintroduced into the curriculum. Um, After kind of doing a deeper dive, the religious studies department chair had decided, in conjunction with some other research, to introduce a Ignatian capstone class that gives students more of an overview of the spiritual exercises. That was really, really neat to hear about, certainly. And praise and worship nights have become a regular feature on campus about once a month, mostly because students approached us and had said, "Hey, we're willing to be available and put in a good amount of the grunt work. Is this something that you could support us with?" So really positive things. I should add in a few disclaimers, as I think is always the case in academic writing. I am an alumnus of the school and a former employee and now a current employee. And so certainly I have an affection for the place that's, I think, hard to deny. The other thing that limited us was that we had all of this data. We had 118 responses, but there wasn't the possibility for follow-up interviews to go deeper with students, perhaps to ask them to share more about what they offered us. And then we were also limited with comparative data from other Jesuit schools. The JSN was really good to us, and we were able to access the previous version of the Grad survey, which was all Likert scale questions. And so we had some benchmarks to kind of look at, but not a ton, because this was the first time that we had introduced free response questions. It's been interesting. I have had some great conversations with family, with friends, with colleagues, with brother Jesuits about this, and some folks have asked, and I think rightly so, whether or not we can really measure the impact of the Jesuit education on students. Can we really measure to what extent high school experiences help students become more loving and religious? I completely agree that that's a big task, and I don't think that one survey gets us there completely. I am encouraged by some of the work that's been done across institutions to measure happiness among students and to follow students and to better understand what makes students happy. I think of the work that Sonia Luber-Mirsky has done, all of her research. She has been featured several times in the New York Times and beyond in the media for her groundbreaking research. I also think about the landmark study that was done. Probably a good number of us have heard about this study of following Harvard students from their time at Harvard, but then in the 60 years that followed, and just getting a sense of, okay, what identifiable trends might we point out in terms of what has made people happy. And so that made me think about trends that make people more loving or perhaps more religious or interested in their faith. I think we also can go back to our Ignatian roots, and I apologize again for the formatting of this slide, but a couple points I might make. The first one is that we have a tradition, or the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits have a tradition in just digging in and getting data since the founding of the Jesuit order. So Jerome Nadal, who was one of the first Jesuits, he administered a broad survey to entering Jesuits to ask them, hey, can you articulate some of the reasons that you entered? What encouraged you to do so? So John O'Malley, Jesuit historian, was really good about kind of cataloging all of that. So certainly we go back to our roots in our desire to kind of track and better understand impact. You know, if I could do the survey again, I would be curious to know about DAIB initiatives at Brophy and also at our other schools. So many schools have added in DI offices in recent years, and would be great to know just the success and the impact there, especially as they relate to mission and to the Grad at Grad. Schools have also really invested in their learning resource centers and their resources for diverse learners, and so better understanding the impact on the student experience there. Would be interesting to see, with AI being very much in the air that all of us breathe, how that impacts students' understanding of the Grad at Grad and their understanding of mission at our schools. And it'd also be neat to have schools in conversation with one another, perhaps similar schools, similar Jesuit schools across the country, across the US and Canada, and even beyond, learning from one another. And the good news is that we did sort of have the opportunity to do this all over again. So this is my cheesy reference to the Brady Bunch. You can see that quote that I have there. But after I had written my master's thesis, I sort of filed it away, got my diploma, was ready to move on and start up at a school at Seattle Prep over in Seattle. And just a few months afterwards, Bob Reiser at the JSN had mentioned that he came across the thesis I wrote, and he was interested in the possibility of expanding that survey across all 5 attributes and perhaps looking at the possibility of introducing a data instrument so that all of our Jesuit schools might be able to participate in it. So a couple things came out of it. There was a fellowship that was formed. I got to work with I've been working with 4 lovely people on the left-hand side of this slide. So Father Bob Reiser, Dr. Kristen Ross Cully, who's with us on this call, Dr. Gabe Velez, and Dr. Ralph Nofi, just really outstanding people who I think are steeped in our mission and also really familiar with doing research, with looking at numbers, with designing surveys. So that's been really fun to be on a committee with them. I also got an opportunity to work with a handful of folks on the right-hand side. Boston College was involved in a project the past couple of summers in creating some modules, some online modules for any educator across the JSN to learn more about the Grad at Grad. And so got to work with Dr. Melanie Wittenbach, Dr. Martin Scanlon, and Holly Hoffman, who is a PhD student at BC. There are so many other photos of different people that I could put up here, but I've just been really, really grateful at what has transpired since the writing of the survey. Here's just kind of an overview of where we've been since writing the thesis. So that team on the left that I mentioned, we've been having pretty frequent phone calls throughout most of last year. We met first in November of last year in St. Louis, and we had an opportunity to share some of our work with principals. And then we took some of their feedback and then implemented that into a new survey across all 5 pillars, and we used 2 pilot schools to gather some more data. So just digging a little bit deeper, as well as the Boston College Summer Institute that created that JSN Learn course. Here's a little bit of a preview of some of the things that came out of our expanded pilot. So we ran some expanded pilots in the spring of this year, as well as most recently this fall. And we used Brophy in Phoenix, as well as Seattle Prep in Seattle for our case study here. You can see that by and large, what students are sharing at both institutions are really, really positive. They're excited. They are grateful for their school's commitment to education, to faith, to service, and the ways in which their schools have kind of moved them and helped them grow. Some concrete things have come out of the freeform responses in particular. One school is looking into creating a peer mentorship program, and they have actually launched that this fall. And once we received the data in the spring, that school, a few administrators had said, wow, we really feel confirmed, or that much more confirmed, that we've made the right decision. Their gut was sort of telling them to move there, but just have one more piece of data encouraging all of that. Another school is rethinking the possibility of morning prayer and adding in more familiarity with scripture, with Ignatian spirituality, with some things that are very much part of our charism. I think both schools have come away with this realization from the surveys that were sent out, that that students feel the impact of the Grad, or they can recognize it across the curriculum, but there's always more room to grow, and there are always courses that have the possibility of going and making those explicit ties to the profile of the Grad. I'll say on a personal note that I ended up learning so much from both writing this master's thesis, as well as the fellowship that followed, and just the incredible people that I was able to work with. The first one is just to trust in the God of surprises. I had no idea that this master's thesis would transpire into anything else. I was energetic about it at the time, but I thought, oh, I'll just save it away and move on to the next step in my journey. But it's been a lot of fun to be involved in so many of these projects, and to hear from other people about what's going on their end. The other kind of realization, and I had this awareness before the project, but just would underline this 10 or 15 different times. We have some outstanding people across the network, across the US and Canada and beyond, really. But just really inspired by people's dedication to our students, to education, by people's willingness to share, ideas, to put input, to give of their time, which I know is such a limited resource for all of us, really. So very inspired by all of that. The third is that our students are really clear. When we see a lot of them respond, it's very easy to see where the trend line is, very easy to see what they have to offer us. And I think as they get closer and closer to graduation, and especially, they have a good pulse on what's really been incredible about the mission as lived out on their end, as well as where they see some room for improvement. So that's really all that I had to share with you this afternoon. I'll turn it over to Dr. Kristen Ross-Cully, and I think she'll take some questions at this point.
Thank you so much, Simon. Oops,
Thank you.
Good. Making sure my mute, you can hear me. Thank you so much, Simon. You know, as I listen to you and your meaningful work, I'm reminded of a quote that I keep on a post-it note here on my desk. You can probably see it behind me, but it's whatever you are doing, that which makes you feel most alive is where God is, right? One of our favorites from St. Ignatius. And as you speak about the energy that this work has given you, that really seems to resonate. We've got some time for a Q&A here, which I'm excited about because there's a terrific group of minds on this call. So I'll cue that up. I would say that as I listen to Simon's work, I think that you can understand kind of the trajectory of our interest in it and in the important work that he has done. So when we first came across his research and his thesis a few years back, you know, like I'm sure you're feeling, we were very interested in it and understanding that it was very likely something that would be needed as a strong resource amongst our schools. So when Simon came to our annual JSN principals gathering last year and did a similar presentation for the principals group and was met with a lot of interest and support, we decided to put the team of really awesome researchers together to expand his survey from the 2 dimensions of the Grad at Grad to all 5. And I can give a, you know, echo some of Simon's thoughts that that project is really making some awesome progress. And he will join our principals group again next month in San Jose to give kind of an update and a bit of a soft launch of sorts for some more feedback within the pilot process. And we hope to have that new mission assessment instrument surrounding or based on the Grad at Grad ready at some point early in the new year for schools. So that's been a really exciting development for us in conjunction with the JSN Learn class that Simon mentioned, which is a virtual online class centered around the Grad at Grad that was done with Simon and with our partners at the Boston College Lynch School of Education. So 2 kind of exciting things that are coming down the line that I think will be real resources for this group. So that said, as we open it up for conversation, Simon, I would ask you, you went into this obviously knowing a lot about our students and kids and student-centered learning and Ignatian education. What surprised you from your study? Like what was, if you had to name one thing that you learned from students by trying to assess religious and loving, what was it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think just that students were not only speaking enthusiastically about their high school careers, I figured that they might, but also that they so many of them articulated this hunger, this desire for more. Like, hey, is there any way we might have more retreats or more communal prayer services or this kind of thing for high school students who could be doing so many other things to be asking for that? I thought, wow, this is really amazing.
Thank you. So we've got some time for insights, questions, feedbacks, curiosities from the group here. I'll ask you just to go ahead and speak up. No reason to raise your hand or whatever. If you can go ahead and we'll do our best to spotlight you so that you can have a conversation here directly with Simon. So go for it, whoever would like to go first.
Hi, this is Jim Krogan at BC High. It's great to see you. Kristen, great to see you as always. And I pause because I'm trying to formulate my question, because so much of what you described and the students in the schools and what they're asking for, looking for, resonates here, very strongly. And it's great to see that it's all over our schools, and it speaks so much about the work that we do, the extraordinary work, being done in our schools. But I guess my question is somewhere along the lines of how do our graduates bring this into the world after graduation? Our schools support them, encourage them, provide a space for them to thrive as religious and loving, for the grad at grad components. Will we be looking at any data or any kind of follow up, like when they're in college and move on? I don't know if you spoke about any of that because I missed the beginning of your presentation. But as a question that comes to me more and more, how do they take this with them beyond? And that's beyond, kind of the survey you were doing, but has any thought been given into that? And as you mentioned, more longitudinal work, that's done. If you can just say more about that, it could be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I know there was a dissertation written by uh, somebody who works at St. Paul's up in Canada, and Jared is his first name. I'm not remembering his last name, although Kristen might remember. But he actually sat down with graduates who are already in college, graduates of St. Paul, and asked them what they remembered and what they've taken away. And I think I remember I've read through parts of it, and they certainly had significant things to say, and strong foundations and strong memories that they hung onto. Um, so that's the hope. I think there's so much room for so many of our schools to kind of further develop their relations with alums. I can think for us here at Brophy, we interact with our alums. Once a year there's a reunion, but it'd be great to have mechanisms to be in regular contact with them and to have those conversations and to see what people are taking with them, retaining, so forth. I went to our reunion at Brophy just a few weeks ago, and um, students were students, alums were talking about Bible studies that they had done in college, and maybe even the possibility of, coming back to their high school campus and being able to do that. So I think there's so much work that could be done, and I'm sure Kristen has perspective too about what she's seen at our various schools.
Yeah, I was thinking, Jim, as I was listening to you, that you're really talking about retention of what we're trying to do during the, 4 years of secondary school or even before. And that is that's been a large part of the conversation of the development of this survey, not so much the post-secondary years, so not so much as they're adults and into college, but even just while they're with us in our halls, and the conversations of when is the best time to do this type of assessment, freshman, sophomore year, junior, all of that. But that idea of retention and depth of learning around these ideals has been in the air and a lot of conversations. I can't speak to it beyond that, but it is a very good question.
Simon, Elliot Gualtieri at Fairfield Prep. Good to see you. And
Elliot, great to see you. How's it going?
good. I'm really appreciative of what you presented today. And when we talked about this last year, I was again just fascinated by the research and the work. Here at Fairfield Prep, the last couple of years, we've actually worked with the C21 Institute at BC and their Student Voices project. And some of these same questions that you asked the Brophy students and Seattle Prep students are some of the same things we were seeing through that survey as well. The focus in on community opportunities to worship in community. It based on the results of the surveys we did with the Student Voices project, we brought back daily mass. So now we have 8 a.m. mass every day at school. We added a Kairos retreat. We've expanded our confirmation and RCIA program. This year we have 27 students who are preparing for the sacraments, 7 of which are going to be baptized.
Fantastic.
And I think this is just really important, for ongoing conversation and ongoing dialogue. Um, I'm really excited to see this fuller grad at grad survey, that touches upon all of them. But I would also include in this, what we saw in our survey too was the importance of athletics, and teams either doing service projects together, or worshiping together. So we started a couple of years ago a sports season mass. So we just had our fall sports season mass this past week, where all the teams from the fall gather together for mass in the morning. I work with coaches to organize team service projects. So I think we're just on the cusp of really kind of seeing where we could head here. So I guess it's more of a comment, but did the area of athletics ever factor in, or was that ever a part of, as it related to religious and loving, did athletics ever factor into this as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, Elliot, and thanks for sharing all the wonderful stuff happening at Fairfield Prep. In the revised pilot that we did most recently with Seattle Prep and Brophy, we revised one of the questions, one of the freeform questions, and I think it was under open to growth, but we asked, could you name, is it a sport you played? Is it a club you were in? Is it a class you took? Any kind of opportunity that you've had that's really moved you in that direction. And we saw, um, at least for Brophy, students were mentioning sports almost as much as they were their different classes that they had taken. So absolutely, athletics has a really solid impact, and I think you're exactly right to say there's room to explore like how to have those be good opportunities or vehicles for students to explore their faith and their sense of community and so forth. A good friend of mine, Perry Petrich, who is up in Seattle, he's designed a coach formation
Oh
program
yeah.
for for coaches who might not necessarily be familiar with Catholic education or with the Ignatian tradition. Like, how could you as a coach, have conversation, or how might you encourage a prayer before a practice or a
Right.
big game, or a mass, or these kinds of things. So it's been neat to have been in conversation with him and just see what some other
Yeah.
schools are doing with that.
Yeah. Because just working with one of our longtime faculty members here, we're basically we're calling it right now coach the coaches. So it's for those coaches outside of the school building, so who are not full-time staff, which is becoming more and more, but they don't get the professional development opportunities that obviously our full-time staff get. So how best to support them if they're not in the building, on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So we're focusing in on our Ignatian tradition, Catholic tradition, but also included in this is going to be um, a day in the life of our students. So hearing from folks in student life. So whether it's our deans, um, counselors, or even some of our athletes, to talk about what it's like for them on a daily basis. So our coaches know what they go through on a daily basis. And, um, I think this is, because they spend so much time with their athletic teams. I think these are really great avenues that we can reach our students and also our adults. And Drew Vinsky over at St. Ignatius in Cleveland has a really great chaplains program as well. Um,
Fantastic.
but I'm really interested to hear what Seattle has to do. I'm going to reach out and see
Yeah.
what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Some exciting things happening.
Great. Thanks so much. Great
Thanks.
work.
Thank you.
If I can ask a question, I'm from Braywell College School, Toronto, also part of the Jesuit School Network. My name is Eric Guy, and just looking at the data you initially collected from Brophy, I was kind of what caught my eye was the small number of respondents to the survey out of the total number of students, senior students. So my first question was there a reason for such a low response to the survey? And the second question, because it is such valuable information, did you consider doing a more an entry-level survey that could be used as a gauge prior to graduation, or maybe an annual survey to gauge which years have had the most effect?
Yeah. Eric, thank you, and great to chat with you. You're asking all the perfect questions. We, in our second round of the pilot, or it'd be the third round now, just about a month ago, we introduced the survey to a different class, this time the class of 2026, this year's seniors, and we got a 97% response rate. So much higher than just under 50%. And I'll tell you, part of the secret was I found out that we had a little bit of budget, not much. We just bought like bagels for the seniors, but we told them ahead of time. We had this small assembly, and we said, hey, you know, this survey will get pushed out to you in your community period, something comparable to homeroom. Any class that has 100% participation will get entered into this pool, and then there'll be a drawing for, you know, I don't know, 3 or 4 classrooms to receive free breakfast in the days to follow. And I think teenage boys and any teenager and food, I think that helps a little bit with the participation. We wanted to keep it optional and anonymous just for the sake of authenticity, but that seemed to help our numbers. Also, this possibility of administering the survey in the fall versus, you know, right before graduation. You can imagine any senior has so much on their minds. So certainly some good learnings there. And the second part of your question, you had asked if there's any possibility of having maybe an introductory survey but before students are on the brink of graduation. We've toyed around, or Brophy's toyed around, with the idea of administering that same survey to sophomores as a halfway point, and then just being able to gauge, okay, what for this particular class, what's going really well, and are there some gears that we might consider shifting for the latter half of their experience? So yeah, my hope, it'll be interesting to see what's possible, but my hope is that maybe this spring we can get ourselves in conversation with our sophomores and see what they might share with us. Great questions.
I'll be mindful of time here. We're coming to an end of it. We're so happy to share a glimpse into the process of the development of what will become a new Grad at Grad assessment instrument that's available to schools around the Jesuit Schools Network, and really so grateful to Simon for starting this and for the foundations of the entire project. You know, as with any kind of research, you start very small with a small idea and a small setting, and you hope as time goes on and the work doesn't get lost, that it can be built and expanded and so on. So we're really looking forward to it. That the aim for the survey is that from the very beginning has been that it is a user-friendly instrument that resonates with kids today, so the kids that we are educating in our schools, so it's modern and timely, and that it is accessible. So it isn't for those of you that are familiar with the SPS2 from the past that Simon has mentioned. It's still available, but that we've had a lot of feedback on it, that it's very long and was written many years ago. So this will be timely and modern and user friendly, and that has been one of the hopes from the beginning. Obviously, seeking to assess something that's at the heart of what all of us are trying to do with kids in schools, every role in the community. So we thank you for Simon to kicking that off. And again, this is a glimpse into a process that will continue to unfold. We'll be sure to keep you posted on the development of it. I really appreciate looking at all of the names and faces on this screen. There are so many different roles and different settings. And so it's exciting to us to affirm that this is something that is really interesting and of relevance to all of the folks around our network. We've recorded this session, and so we will share it widely for folks that haven't been able to come. So I would encourage you, if there is someone in your community that you think would really be interested in this topic, please be sure to pass that video along when it lands in your email box or social media account. So we'll do that. Again, a reminder that Simon will be joining our principals gathering next month, where we will share similar updates with the principals group. So all of the principals from your schools will get to hear an update on the same thing, and then more to come in the new year. So I'm sure there's lots more to be said, but we will leave it at that. Again, thank you to Father Simon Zachary. Thank you to all of you for being here and for sharing this important work. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Thanks all. Thanks for attending.